that, I will start the recording. And today's session, I'm really excited about. We have a group of guest speakers, all representatives of exciting new and some new and some more established digital health startups from across Canada. And we'll going to be doing this in a panel format. So we're going to start with each of our speakers having a few moments just to introduce their company and the product that they work on, and then we'll have a moderated discussion with Dr. Van Roy. So with that, I will turn it over to our first speaker, Amos.
It's only been 3 years and I still forgot to unmute. Thank you so much, Beth, for inviting me and for having me here today. I do appreciate the opportunity to tell you guys about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and about the collaborations and the strength of academic collaboration. So just to give you the one-page, very, very busy slide of what we do. We have been building digital patient engagement tools for close to 9 years now, really with a focus on patient engagement, and most recently digital therapeutics that are focused on patient engagement. And our model of building has really been focused on collaborating with academics and academic health centers, clinicians, tech transfer offices, to really work with innovators and really smart people in different organizations to co-create different kinds of patient engagement that is essentially rapidly deployable, somehow uses data to drive the communication between a patient and a healthcare stakeholder or a clinical organization. And from that, we co-validate, and we can talk a little bit about those validations today, obviously, and then ultimately co-commercialize. So we build, validate, and co-commercialize digital patient engagement tools. We have a number of different use cases that we then commercialize or sell to our clients, which are typically healthcare clients, ranging from health plans, health insurance companies, both in the US and Canada, pharmaceutical manufacturers, specialty pharmacy, and other providers throughout North America. So some of our sort of flagship tools, we have one of our flagship digital therapeutics for severe mental illness. That's called A4I, the App for Independence. And that's a co-commercialization or a joint venture between ourselves and CAMH. We also have a collaboration with a local UBC academic named Patty Jansen. I'm not sure if you guys know her, where we've co-created something called Smart Mom and Smart Parent, which has been sort of spreading across multiple health authorities in BC. That is a perinatal texting program for education support, and really providing digital communications to prenatal and for the first year of after pregnancy or first year of a child's life. So that's us in a very quick sort of nutshell. Ultimately, a technology platform that works with very smart people to build very interactive and data-driven communications for multiple populations. So that's me. Oh, and that's QR code if you want more info.
Thanks. I was having trouble unmuting myself too. Thanks, Amos. That was an excellent introduction. We look forward to hearing more from you in the discussion. And now we have Eli Health. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Pavlovic-Rivas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eli. We're a Montreal-based company developing a device, at-home device that measures hormone levels in saliva. And our goal is to put hormonal data in the hands of women at all stages of their life, eventually from puberty to postmenopause. We started the company in late 2019. It was initially driven by clear unmet needs in women's health. And we built initially partnerships with a university where we leverage tech transfer to speed up our development process. And as this previous speaker was mentioning, we also wanted to work with very intelligent people and leverage the work they were doing to improve health outcomes of women. So those research collaboration enabled us to build an evidence-based product, also to validate it. And I'll be happy to chat more about the other partnerships we have in the pipeline for the development and the validation of our product.
Thanks, Marina. That was short and sweet. I'm sure you have tons more you can tell us, but we'll pass it on now to David.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm David Helliwell, the co-founder and executive board chair at Thrive. I'm sorry we didn't quite get the format right for this slide. This is more something for reading, so I'm not going to actually talk you through it, but I'll spend a minute or two telling you the story about Thrive Health and some of the things that we're doing in terms of research partnerships. I noticed on this call already there are a couple people who we've done some research projects with. I saw Matthias coming in, who we're doing a perioperative opioid addiction project with the supercluster, and Mark Ansermino, where we've done the Panda pain tracking. And so hopefully we can get into some of that for some real discussions of things that we've learned through that. But we started Thrive Health to guide patients through particularly complex healthcare journeys, and we started in Vancouver. And really, we started the whole company as an extension of some research being done by clinicians in the surgical space. So working with plastic surgery at St. Paul's Hospital here in Vancouver, and helping to streamline the pre-surgical admissions process and then to post-surgical follow-up and patient-reported experience and outcomes metrics. And then that, we liked that as a starting point, which might be a useful thing for people looking at wanting to make partnerships with companies, is really focusing on a specific problem that can be generalizable in other ways. So what worked great for us is by working with surgery, we developed a very good way of handling assessments and guiding people through journeys. So our mission is to empower patients and their families through healthcare journeys, but a big part of the way we do that is by also enabling clinicians to have better clinical decision support. So, whether it's identifying, risk of opioid addiction or risk of frailty or other conditions that could add complexity to a patient's care journey and come up at the last minute. And then also just guiding people through what they need to be thinking of next and preparing them so they're not surprised when they get there. And through our journey, we've expanded to chronic pain. We do a lot of work around happiness and well-being. I'll mention that as an area where we're also bringing work from the research laboratory into practice, and that's through my father, 85, but still working. Actually, he's in Oxford today giving a presentation at a happiness conference, and so using this world-leading happiness research and applying it to happiness and well-being of people going through healthcare journeys, and realizing just how important that is. And briefly, through COVID, it turned out that our assessments and journeys worked really well for people going through COVID. So we did the BC COVID app and the Canada COVID app, and Life Labs adopted our software for a lot of their back end. We signed on, a lot of Canada's biggest employers, most of the biggest universities. So really just, guiding people through these healthcare journeys. We're a small company. We've got about 70 employees, mostly in BC, but also in Alberta and Ontario. Had about 10 million Canadians on the platform over the last couple of years. It started, I guess, 4 years ago. Thanks.
You're a small company, but you've done quite a lot in the last few years. I think we're all familiar with your products now, particularly in BC. Thanks, David, for that introduction. Anya, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anya. I'm the founder of Rooted. I started Rooted out of personal experience with the problem. So the problem is around anxiety being the most prevalent mental health concern globally. And one stat that really stood out to me is that over 66% of sufferers don't actually seek the treatment that they could benefit from due to stigma, inaccessibility of resources, and financial constraints. And that's where I found myself when I was struggling. So Rooted is largely a response to that. The solution being Rooted with accessible, affordable, and on-demand relief from anxiety and panic attacks. Rooted has a number of different tools for understanding anxiety management in the short term and the long term, a panic attack tool for if you're in the middle of a panic attack, and a number of different preventative tools, including breathing tools, journals, and guided visualizations and sleep sounds. We are primarily available through the app stores, so that business to consumer model where we have 2 million downloads and over 30,000 reviews, leaving us with a 4.8 out of 5 rating. So it's been really incredible. The best part being hearing back from users and how they're using Rooted. We are also in a number of different partnerships and also entering the B2B space from the health insurance perspective. So just in the early stages of that and learning about that right now. We do have a scientific study done with the University of Victoria as well.
Great, thanks, Anya. And our final introduction, and we'll get to the fun stuff. And please, I forgot to mention at the beginning, for the audience, we are going to take audience questions. So if you have questions for any of our founders and speakers, please put them in the chat and we'll call on you or read them out. So Mark, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Fume. I'm the co-founder and CEO at DNA Stack. 1 in 4 Canadians die of cancer. 1 in 15 Canadian children are born with a rare disease. 1 in 66 children are diagnosed with autism. And we've all endured this, 2+ year-long pandemic caused by a little virus whose genetic material continued to mutate. So our space is really focusing on the use of genomics data to realize the promise of precision health, where we're able to diagnose and treat patients based on their unique genetic profiles. So the problem that we are addressing more specifically is that while we are generating exponential volumes of genomics and health data, the reality is that data is very siloed and fragmented. And so at DNA Stack, we are advancing a new style of collaborative research with technology that can connect together a sort of internet for genomics that, much like the regular internet, helps researchers share and make discoveries from larger and more diverse data sets than was ever before possible. And really importantly, without moving the data, so as to preserve privacy and the stewardship of very sensitive information. So earlier this year, we launched a product called Viral AI, which we used in partnership with our federal and provincial governments as a response to the COVID pandemic. It's actually the first federated network for infectious disease research. And we're taking that technology to the fight against other disease areas in neuroscience and oncology. And so our focus now is, how do we really build collaborative data and research networks to advance genomics and precision health in Canada and internationally. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, Mark. And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all see each other. And people, feel free, if you're comfortable, to turn on your video if you'd like to contribute to the conversation. And I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful moderator, Tibor, to take it away from here.
Thank you very much, Beth. My name is Tibor van Rooij. I'm the lead digital health research initiative at the BCCHR. And I'm very happy to have you all here. And I want to thank Amos, Marina, David, Anya, and Mark for graciously giving their time to be here. And I'm just really surprised that I already hear all of the things that we talk about all the time, which is if you create digital health applications, then you need to, it's good to co-create them because you actually want to make this product for people and have people use it. And so you can't do this alone. And also, dear to my heart is what Mark said, is that, a lot of these, the real power of these things gets unlocked when we actually get access to data. And that is a big piece of the puzzle often. So my first question would be, is like to the entire panel here is what have you done in the past with working together with researchers, and if you haven't done so, then what does your ideal team look like? So I'll start with Mark.
So we've had the privilege of working on a number of supercluster projects, and I actually heard that there's many others that have kind of participated in this program. That's been wonderful for us to collaborate. One of our projects is called the Autism Sharing Initiative, where we brought together 13 both Canadian and international organizations around the premise of connecting the world's largest federated network of genomics and health data. And so our ideal collaboration looks like alignment on purpose. I think that that's your starting point. But also the second is structural incentives. You know, the supercluster provides this vehicle for us to collaborate in ways that we never could do before then. And
could you quickly describe what the supercluster is for the people that?
Oh, right. So absolutely, yeah. So the digital supercluster is one of 5 superclusters that was kind of a new program that ICET had started. The digital supercluster is actually based in BC, and they fund kind of industry-led consortia with the requirement that you actually include a post-secondary institution. So it's a really wonderful way to bring together collaborations in ways that we haven't found possible before, right? In our industry, we see typically vehicles to fund academia or vehicles to fund industry, but never quite so productive as the supercluster. And so we worked on one project called the Autism Sharing Initiative, 13 partners, and another more recently in COVID called COVID Cloud, another 13 partners. And that's been a really wonderful way to bring together diverse minds around a common problem. I think the last thing I'll say is for us, it's been wonderful to align with a strategy. And so kind of going back to my first point, in Canada, we have so many different siloed or fragmented individual projects. It's really nice to be able to reverse engineer around a longer term strategic horizon.
Thank you, Mark. Anya.
Yeah, so with Rooted, we did a MyTax project actually with the University of Victoria. So we had some researchers there work with different study participants and see how they were doing with their anxiety, panic attack, and stress levels, both before using the application, during using the application for 4 to 6 weeks, and then afterwards. And so we were able to then validate a reduction in anxiety, stress, and panic attacks. So that is our experience. It was really positive. And I think that, you know, it's something that we're constantly hoping to do to continue proving out the project. And it's been especially helpful as we're working now with health insurance and starting those conversations, being able to show that initial study.
Yeah, so there's a need for research studies to sort of clinically validate your applications.
Definitely, yeah.
And could you quickly tell what MyTax is?
So MyTax, I don't know the acronym. Maybe
No, like what does it do?
Yeah, so they, in this case, they helped us fund the project. So typically it would be, you know, a set amount that the company would need to pay the university. In this case, they helped me fund that so that I could work with the university, and they help fund a bunch of different costs needed to complete the study. So I believe it was a 50-50 split where MyTax covered half and I did the other half. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks.
All right. But we're going to go back to barriers in a second. But like, David, what can you tell us of your?
Sure. Yeah. So we've done absolutely. So we've done quite a lot. We've actually just something we've done in the past year has been we've created a researcher in residence program. So we'll try to have 2 or 3 active researchers, so they could be postdocs or professors who are actively working with us on specific areas. And so that's been great, you know, whether it's happiness and well-being or clinical areas or anything really important like that. I would mention, so for sure, MyTax, Supercluster, you know, IRAP. One thing that wasn't mentioned was the Creative Destruction Lab is a great, so I've been involved there as a mentor and investor for a while, and it's a great way to mix together researchers and entrepreneurs. Another thing that I'd add to the list is just a real commercial opportunity. And there are often ways to bring, more advanced research into commercial opportunities. And then, maybe just to sneak ahead to the barrier side, which kind of fits with it. I just wanted to draft in behind Mark's comment on the importance of alignment. So he mentioned alignment for high level and things that you're really trying to achieve and what's driving you. Absolutely. Another really important element where we've had a mismatch sometimes if we haven't dug in early enough is on timelines, because typically companies want something in 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. Some of these research projects are, 2 years, 5 years. And if you're not, pretty direct about that up front, there can be frustration on all sides, because neither you need both to happen. You need the near term and the long term to happen, but everyone's got to be on the same page. And kind of linked up to that is the importance of intellectual property, and which tends to get way overvalued in the early stages, and people put way too much time into parsing out who gets what, when really it's what you do with it that has the value. So, and I think that's
Thank you for that, David. Thank you. So you mentioned a number of really great alternative funding sources to us, alternative funding sources like IRAP. And have you done anything with like some more like CIHR funding or NSERC funding or more traditional funding sources that you know of?
So we haven't used CIHR. We've had some that's flowed through NSERC. And I was on the board for IRAP for a few years, and so got to see, on the inside there. And so there are, there's some really neat things that are possible there to bridge the gap. And really, that's what they look to IRAP as the way to engage with companies. So often it can be IRAP plus some other National Research Council body or some other federal body. So I'd recommend, having them as a part of the puzzle, even though the funding may not all come from them. They're a great way to pull it together.
Right. I think researchers are used to like trying to pull from several funds simultaneously to make their projects work. Marina, what can you tell us about working with research?
Well, I agree with Mark and David that alignment on purpose is the first step and the most important, but timeline is also as important. And IP, I agree too that it's something that in our experience, we've managed to sort that out quickly, but we've heard other companies where this was a major blocker that sometimes even prevented the project to happen. We were fortunate that it was not our case. Our company, we started because it was driven out of a personal need, like Anya. So the first step for us was to build the product. And we knew that there was some amazing research that is being done across Canada. So our the first step we've done when we started was to see, is there some partnerships we can do to leverage that research and accelerate our path to market. So really the first step of building the product, we've done a first partnership with an university where we were able to spin out one key component of our technology. That was very helpful for us to build out our initial proof of concept that enabled us then to raise our 1.5 million pre-seed round back in 2020. So really that first step of building a partnership was critical there, research partnership. After that, to validate the product, it was also very important. And the value we see in those partnerships is to generate independent data that is useful for our company, but in other cases for other research applications. So that's one thing, validating the product. But in other cases, we needed also to validate information on which our product and use cases is built. So for example, we're measuring hormones in saliva. And one question we were having often from a physician in the medical community is the levels of hormones in saliva correlated and as accurate as the levels present in blood. So instead of doing those validation fully internally, doing research partnerships, in this case, it was with McGill, to answer this question was very helpful to us because first of all, as an early stage startup, we didn't have necessarily those resources in-house, but more importantly, because the researcher with whom we were partnering had the expertise, and through those grants we were able to leverage. It was a win-win collaboration. So in a nutshell, that's how we've been collaborating so far to build and validate. But in the future, we also see many other possibilities, including once the product is commercialized and we create one of the first large-scale longitudinal data set around daily hormone fluctuations. We see many research opportunities to close important knowledge gap in women's health. So there's many exciting possibilities in the future as well.
Thank you for that. Can you tell us what the funding sources were for your McGill cooperation? Do you recall?
Yeah, so many of the usual suspects that were already mentioned. MyTax, we've done 5 MyTax projects so far. IRAP, Allianz grant, I think through NSERC. MedTech is also another source of funding for collaborative project. They're based in Montreal, but I think their program is open across Canada. So that was also another source of funding for collaborative research project. In the case of MedTech, it's for our clinical validations. So a collaboration between our company, academic partner, and also medical institutions.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you, Arena. Amos, what can you tell us of your research endeavors?
Yes, many research endeavors. So our initial focus was medication adherence programs. And so that attracted a lot of attention initially from academics, both in the US and in Canada. And then we're talking, 9-10 years ago now, where initially to collaborate with academics, I would troll poster presentations and to walk around and say, hey, are you interested in, doing some research together? We'll do a great deal for developing software. It was always typically in some sort of medication compliance field, whether it was chronic disease or mental health or anything like that. And then from there, just started to, one of our first ones was with Johns Hopkins University, which was, out of left field, just suddenly collaborating with one of the largest institutions in America. And then from there, just started really building relationships with a number of different institutions, academics, U of T, UBC, University of Calgary, Saskatchewan. And from there, developed relationships, really, your point about developing a shared vision, a shared purpose, a shared sort of objective is really, really important. But understanding that the timelines for academic research they don't align with commercial realities kind of thing. But once you build those relationships, one thing leads to another, which leads to opportunities for funding. We've done CIHR funded programs. CABI is another one that hasn't been mentioned, CABHI, Canadian Association for Brain Health, something. That's a great one. We did a feasibility project with St. Elizabeth's Healthcare. So that was funding industry and a provider-based collaboration there. NSERC definitely has been, and CIHR have been really important to a lot of the projects that we've done. But again, these are really long timelines for the purposes of building something that will ultimately have a commercial purpose. So yeah, that alignment needs to be there. And that's why and I think it was David who was also talking about IP and the focus of a lot of these organizations on getting the IP agreement, down to the nth degree before doing anything. And said there are, that's sort of touching into the barriers. But yeah, from our perspective, those academic collaborations, research, whether it's funded or whether it's somehow, ultimately meant for a commercial purpose, that is really sort of our the model that we strive to build, or striving to build, is how can we offer sustainability to the organization in terms of, here's research, that's great, what do we do with it next, kind of thing. So from that perspective, that a lot of researchers are interested in that. Well, tech transfer offices are interested in that because their job is to commercialize the IP from within the organization. So yeah, we have lots of scars to show for it as well.
Thank you for that, because that leads directly into Mark and Sermino's question, which is like, what are the barriers that you see? And you mentioned some of them in a focus, in an early focus on IP. What are some other barriers? And now I'm going to literally just open it up to the group. I'm not going to just, what are some barriers we all see to engaging with research? And some have been mentioned in IP timelines. Are there other ones?
I can just riff on what I was saying before. There, when you're dealing with health things, there are a number of different security, privacy issues that need to be accounted for, and those are barriers. So it prevents people who prevents not outside of the industry people from in companies from entering into this space because they're not aware of HIPAA and all these different things that are long, slow processes of
right. Those are
things.
Well, those are more like politics, but like, are those, that would actually be an argument to engage with researchers that could help you along with this.
Fair, yes.
So, which some of the projects I'm on, we are doing that. So one of the things that does happen, and I wonder, is that you end up working together with a wide field of different experts because you get so close to implementation and it's almost like complexity explodes. So what are some other barriers people have found, David, Marina, Anya, on working together with researchers? What was hard?
I would say that it's, for us at least, it's really the IP and timelines that is the most challenging. IP, we were lucky on that point, but in some cases it was almost pass or not, because even if sometimes we really want to do the collaboration, we have other stakeholders, investors, there's things that need to be made clear around the IP, and this comes back to timeline too, that for the collaboration to happen, there's the timeline around getting the funding, then the timeline around discussing the IP, and then timeline around doing the project. And in all of those steps, often the academic partner and the startup partner are not going at the same pace necessarily, and the startup is focused on their specific objective versus the research partner may have multiple research going on and other responsibilities. So in her case, it was making sure that timeline aligns. That was the main driver around successful or less successful research collaboration. And to give more perhaps illustration around this is that just getting the funding, some grants could take 6 months, securing the IP when we started the process, the university said you can expect 9 months. Ultimately, we did it in 3, so that was good. But just this time frame of close to 1 year, where the project has not started yet. In the startup reality, 1 year, you're supposed to have built your product, build your team, raise your next fundraising round, prove what you needed to prove. So in that 1 year time frame, it's an eternity for a startup. And sometimes some processes, like a 6-month process for non-dilutive funding or a grant, could be considered quick in other industries. So it's really that differences in terms of timeline that could be the biggest challenge, at least for us. It's the main driver when we decide to do a partnership or not.
Mark, I saw you leaning forward to, oh, Anya, go for it.
I was just going to say our problem wasn't unique, it sounds like. It was also around timeline, like Amos said, that timeline against the commercial opportunity, they really didn't add up. And so I'm kind of picturing it as, having the research just being ongoing and trying to make it as separate from the commercialization as possible. In Rooted's case anyway, that's sometimes been an opportunity. But yeah, even being on the fast track has taken, over a year in some cases. And in that time, the product has grown and changed so much. So yeah, it's definitely timeline for Rooted as well.
Any other comments on this?
Sure. Maybe a couple of things. So just from the Thrive Health perspective, just to give a sense of how it works. So the Thrive platform can be used by researchers to reach a lot of patients without having to build their own apps and things. We have a click configure code architecture so that some stuff can just be done with a click and it's ready. There are easy configurations that people can do, and for really big things there can be actual new code written around it, but typically it's just fast to get going. So that's kind of our universe. We're not building things from scratch with researchers, but we see sort of 3 dimensions of barriers. One is from the educational institutions themselves, another is from researchers, and a third is kind of the institutions, but it's sort of a group of their own around privacy. So for the organizations, particularly university industry liaison offices, can be, we'll sometimes just not even bother doing stuff because it's just not worth the trouble. There are some that are really good, some that are not so good. In terms of the researchers, again, it comes to the clarifying expectations up front. But what can be a non-starter from a company perspective is if the partners aren't putting risk and reward together. So if a partner wants a ton of upside without having any risk, that's just not how things work. Usually people get it, but it's important to recognize that most of the things we're investing in actually don't work, and it's not just a guaranteed you put in a few $1,000s and everybody's a millionaire. There's a lot of stuff along the way that costs a lot of money. And just last thing for privacy is we're seeing more and more that the privacy burden that's being put on a lot of health tech projects is actually well above and beyond what the law actually says. It's kind of mid-level managers who are covering their own backsides and adding on extra layers that are beyond what's actually required, and that's another dimension that can slow things down for researchers and for the companies, right? We're all getting hit by that.
I just want to add one point to his point. There's this whole concept of overhead in research, and when you get the grant and then all of a sudden that grant is 30% less than what you thought it was going to be because suddenly there's overhead and or the grant was cut somehow. So those are definitely barriers. That's another barrier that I thought I might throw in there.
So that's also a barrier to working with researchers is to get the numbers right, budgeting accordingly to the work that needs to be done. Yes, I fully understand. Mark and Sermino, did your question get answered?
Thibault, I think this is great, and I mean I think there was a lot of agreement about what the challenges were, and I certainly remember the days when I could get an ethics application done in about 2 weeks and could start a study, and that wasn't that long ago. And I'd certainly agree with the panelists. I mean, we've made all of these processes, which we hope have made patients safer, but there's no doubt within this milieu that we're working now of this huge, rapid innovation space, the sort of timelines that are available to us is not really compatible. So we need to find ways that we can overcome this. And I would be very happy to hear any suggestions. Thanks.
So what are some ways to overcome this? Like, are universities learning to do better on IP? Is there any shift in that? Is there any shift in that you are seeing in some more leeway around privacy, whereby we understand that this is like a tension field, you can be completely secure, but then you can't use anything. So is anybody on the panel seeing some light at the end of the tunnel or some silver linings coming?
Yeah, I'm seeing definitely increased agility and alignment between some of the tech transfer offices that we see and the notions of venture funding and creative CDL, creative destruction labs involvement. There is, people are definitely moving faster. I can say that the partners that we work with they understand that we need to get out there to market with stuff. And so there is a shift from when we first started to now, where there's definitely more of it's more competitive. I will say though that the level of in the US versus Canada, like a tech transfer office in the US is a massive entity. In Canada, you have a tech transfer office within an institution that's like a person or like 2 people. So it's just the literal levels of funding to do stuff with IP is an order of magnitude different between Canada and the US, and that's something that if we want to compete, we need to change.
That's very good. So I'm going to take another question from the audience, and it's sort of shifting of what we've been talking about. The question is like, are any of your companies using artificial intelligence in any way to enhance your products?
Yes, we are. So in 2 ways, primarily for using machine learning to identify populations that might be at risk and more eligible or more ready for digital engagement, number one, and number two, for the purposes of building chatbots. So those are 2 use cases that we have been actively doing for close to 3 years now.
Anybody else, David?
Yeah, we do a lot of analytics around now, and what exactly you define as AI, I guess we can talk about the boundaries, but we do a lot of analytics, largely machine learning around evaluating risk factors for people and helping to guide them to the next best activities that they should be doing, and also connecting people with the appropriate resources so that you're not waiting for 2 years to see a specialist that says you don't have to see them and go somewhere else. There are some pretty straightforward analytics that can make a big difference there.
Thank you. There's a specific question for Mark for DNA Stack. What do you think of the future of shared Canadian genomics? Will we arrive at a single workbench on a single cloud platform like Terra in the US? Or do you envision a cloud-based analysis environment?
Really, really great combo question there, Philip. Thank you for asking it. We can open up to discussion. So ISAT is right now kind of actively planning a pan-Canadian genomics strategy. And that is active and will be ongoing at least for the next year or so. We're really eager to find out what their plans look like. If it were me, I would start not picking a particular solution, but rather setting a framework based on interoperable standards to say these are the parameters for all technology platforms that you must comply in order for us to be able to interoperate across implementations. And we think that's a really great way to create a competitive landscape where we could have, say, a Terra environment or some combination of environments like, Illumina's connected analysis, Terra, DNA stacks, right? You encourage kind of collaboration that's got some bumper guards up in terms of what are the minimum requirements for a technology platform. And for a long time, we've been working alongside the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, or GA4GH, a really clumsy acronym. But the GA4GH is an international consortia that's kind of focused on developing technical, ethical, regulatory, and security standards that allow us to kind of create what is a blueprint for how genomics and precision health infrastructure might look like. So that's a starting point, is what I'd like to see as some parameters around the standards. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that so far it's been so much kind of project by project funding, but what happens at the end of your project? Researchers tend to hit a cliff in their funding. What happens to the data? There needs to be a more strategic sustainability plan. Maybe data is a revenue driver, but at minimum, we should be paying for the sustainment of high value data sets for longer than the project duration of a research program. That burden should not be on the individual researcher who generated the data. And we can look to examples like the NIH, what it's doing with the STRIDES initiative. It realizes that the best way to drive maximal impact from the data that it generates is to put the data on top of commercial cloud platforms and make the data as broadly accessible as possible. So we'd like to see Canada follow suit there. On your ethics question, I'm not sure if I fully understood it, but we're big proponents of the federated model. And what we mean by the federated model is each institution, each organization, each province will have custodianship over its own data sets, so it could make decisions around ethics and policy. That being said, though, I think that going back to the initial response, we should make sure to be planful that all of these data sets are riding along a sort of an internet for genomics that is based in some sort of standard, so that we don't lock in our data institutionally and regionally.
That is an interesting point, to the sort of the data being locked or not having access to the data. And just before I go to Helia's question, I'd like to sort of hear from the panel, like, where have you encountered not being able to get at data? And is that technological? Is it policy driven? Is it security driven, privacy driven? I'll just throw it into the group. David.
Sure. Yeah, we had a fair bit of that during COVID, where there's a big problem at the system level, and this sort of it's the same mentality that leads to the privacy overstepping what the law says it should actually be doing. There was often an unwillingness to even give citizens a choice to provide their own data to get more benefit from it, right? They just wouldn't even allow that choice to be given to citizens in an informed way to do things. It's just one example, but there's such a fear of anything around, collecting possibly sensitive data that could go sideways. I just wanted to throw out that one situation that we've seen in a number of different ways. Technologically, it's all not a problem if you follow the rules and you invest enough in making it happen. It's not rocket science. It's a pretty much solved problem to do it well. It's more around the policy and the politics.
Anybody else in the panel want to say something about this? All right, then I'm going to Helia's questions. Helia asked, we've seen a big shift to cloud for research over the past year. What type of platforms do you use for collaboration, data, and perhaps code sharing for researchers? Do you do any of this?
Yeah, I can start. We were born in the cloud about 8 years ago, and at that time there wasn't really appetite, at least from Canadian organizations, to migrate wholeheartedly. We've seen a pretty dramatic shift in the last, say, 2 years, especially with COVID. We see cloud computing as one of the best ways for researchers to access the kind of compute resources that are required to run, say, machine learning at scale. And also it's a way to democratize access to organizations that don't otherwise have such large compute clusters. So it's a pretty good democratization mechanism for us to be able to give access to every researcher in Canada and internationally. The kind of best in class, doesn't matter, all you need is an internet connection.
Anybody else?
It's similar for us, where since we started the company, we're on the cloud for the hormone detection we're doing. The mechanism of action, part of this is using machine learning, and having that cloud platform enables us to run this effectively. But beyond that, to provide the insights and to leverage this data, it's a critical component of or work, and eventually to open this data to researchers as well.
Thank you for that, Marina. So I'm going to end, because we have 5 minutes left, with the question, looking to the future, what are you looking for next? In researchers aligned with what endeavor that your company is doing, and what are you envisioning next in your next research collaborations? And I'll just go across all of you. Anya?
Yeah, so given that we've done the one scientific study, we're definitely very keen on continuing to prove out that model around anxiety and panic attacks. We're looking both on the more broad consumer side, so doctors and therapists and clinicians who are currently our top referrers, how are they seeing those results with their patients? And then on the flip side, also within teams. So internally to an organization, how would providing a tool like Rooted help support the team and the organizational structure? So those are two areas that we're looking into. Also hearing a lot about youth anxiety and mental health. And so, yeah, I suppose 3 areas then that we're really looking forward to exploring more and working more in.
Thank you for that. Amos, very briefly, everybody's got a minute now.
Well,
Amos,
sure, I can be super
in your
brief.
next research project.
So what am I hoping for? So, we're digital, purely digital, and we live in the cloud too, as somebody was saying there. Agile science. So one of the drawbacks of typical research is build a thing, test it, and you can't change it along the way. When you're validating digital interventions, when you're validating digital sort of ways of doing things, there needs to be a more iterative approach to the way that you build and iterate the actual tools that you're testing along the way, which some people are starting to work on. It is starting to take hold, but that's something that can also help create more value quicker. That's what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you. David.
Great, thanks. So I don't know, maybe our next research project will be with somebody on this call. That'd be a lot of fun. As an example of something that's worked really well with someone on this call is with Mark Ansermino and the PANDA program. That I think it's a good model in that Mark and his team had been working for 5 years or so on this before we came in. So there'd been a lot of cycles, and it was ready to have a partner to really take it to prime time. Otherwise, we're doing work that's ongoing for happiness and pro-social behaviors, some oncology projects, pediatric work, and mental health and well-being. That's all in flight, partnering with researchers.
Thank you. Marina.
Well, in the future, what we're looking forward for is exploring more ways that we can leverage the unique data set we will create around daily hormone fluctuation, daily and long-term hormone fluctuations. How can we leverage this data to close important gaps in women's health and ultimately improve women's health outcomes? So for sure, we already have a lot in the pipeline, but if there's someone on the call who knows for whom that data could be helpful to help their research progress, we would love to get in touch.
Thank you for that, Marina. Mark, you have 1 minute.
I'll be quick. Okay, so collaboration is not just altruistic, it's a competitive advantage. And we know that the next generation of discoveries is going to be made by creating better connections between stakeholders, data sets, technologies. We have a large unannounced collaborative project that's bringing together over 20 Canadian organizations, and we're really excited about it. But we are also very much interested in building sort of an open innovation ecosystem. So that being said, if there's anyone on the call that's interested in collaboration, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Perfect. We're exactly at time. I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you very much for coming. All the people on the call, thank you very much for attending this series in digital health. We're going to take a little bit of a break, but we'll be back again later. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.